Welcome back to Rome Boys. On this episode, we've got Steve Ray in the house.
In the house.
Oh, here we go.
Out in the country.
Yes.
Yeah, in the farmhouse.
Well, when you pulled up last night, you spoke to our cluster parishes last night, and great talk. I
Amazing.
mean, it was
Yes.
awesome. The turnout, everybody was there. I mean, it was just a great time. But the first thing you said as soon as you got out of the car was, "You guys live in the middle of nowhere."
Yeah, and even coming here, I was on the phone with you, and you're telling me go past the stop sign and then turn right when you find the first dead skunk on the road. Turn left, and then you'll see 6 cows in the field, and you're getting close.
You're almost there.
You're almost there. Waving at you.
Yeah.
Look for the Catholic Church on the hill.
Yeah, none of what you said is a lie. That's true.
Nope.
All of that is true.
No, you guys really do live way, way, way out here, and it's delightful. What a great way to raise a
It
family.
is. It's a blessing. Yeah.
Tony actually quoted someone a long time ago, and I can't remember the source except for Tony, and that is there were more saints created in rural parts of the world.
Like 70%.
Yeah.
From the rural
I had
side
lunch
of the
with
world.
one today, actually. Monsignor Droll.
Okay. Yeah.
I did. He was from Rowena. He was telling
Yes,
me his
he
story
was.
of growing up there. And
Yes.
I was raised in the country, too, on a little farm, so I feel like right at home
There's
with
hope
you
for all of
guys
us. Woohoo!
Yeah. We,
Well, see, most saints come out of rural areas, and then most times when Mary appears to somebody, it's usually they're not very intelligent.
Or usually it's the females that are the more the saints than males. So it's like, oh, wait.
Well, you know,
That's not surprising.
There's an interesting thing about that with who the Mary appears to. She was only 15 years old, and she lived way out off the main road in
you
a
go.
small, unknown village.
Yeah.
And an angel came to speak to her when she was 15. I think she feels much more comfortable with young, innocent people.
Of course.
And look at who she's come to in Fatima and
Right.
Lourdes and all these different places, and Guadalupe, too.
You're
She
right.
goes to the
It's
simple
way out
people.
there. Now, you know better than I. I've only been there once. You've
Yeah.
been there how many times?
Where's that?
Literally where Mary was, grew up. And
I've been to Nazareth 200 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I still get goosebumps and the hair goes up when I'm in front of that cave where she lived.
Yes.
And I tell people that's where Mary lived, right here, and this is where the angel met her. And and when she said yes, this is where the Word became flesh. It didn't happen in Bethlehem; it happened here, and that's why on the altar it says in Latin, "The Word became flesh here."
Oh.
And if you don't get, and that's where the first words of the Rosary are spoken. Hail.
All right.
It didn't say Mary. It said, "Hail, full of grace." Kahare tomene is a Greek word, but
She was the only one in the room, so it was referring to her.
that's right. Yeah. But I think that might be why she feels so comfortable coming to young children and simple people, because she herself is a very simple person in a way.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, it's awesome to have you here.
Well, thank you. Glad to be
Thanks
here.
for making the trip.
Glad to be
Yeah.
here. When I got invited to come to Denton to give talks there, and then you guys called and said, "Hey, as long as you're out there, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away."
Yeah.
It's like
Hop,
four-
Little did you know.
Skip, jump, jump,
So I
jump.
said, "Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
right.
do it. That'll be fun." So I've enjoyed being here.
Thank
3 hours of jumping, and you made it here. Yeah.
Well, last night after you gave the talk, and you did a great job, I must say, is you kind of pull a little moisture out of my eye, and out here in dry West Texas. But
Mr. Convert here.
yeah, I'm a convert as well, and I will tell you that there were many people last night and this morning actually texting me about your talk and about the impact that you've had. So it's awesome to see. There was a bunch of people in the room that are actually becoming converts.
Yeah.
And so to hear your story, I think is a great impact. I want to ask you though, now that you're not in front of a couple hundred people, and we got you all to ourselves, you were Baptist,
Yes.
raised in a great home. Can you go back to that? I don't know if it's the moment of metanoia or that moment that you had where you said you went out and you had long hair and bell-bottom
did.
pants and.
I was 17 years old, and I graduated from high school in 1973, so I was right in the middle of that whole cultural change with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all of the Woodstock. I didn't go there, but my best friend went to Woodstock. all that craziness. I was in the middle of it. I had long hair down on my shoulders, bell-bottom blue jeans. I was a rebel. I had decided I wasn't going to be a Christian 2 years earlier when I was 15 because the Christian kids I knew weren't cool, and I found a whole new group of friends that were. But like Paul says, bad company corrupts good morals, which is why it's great homeschooling your kids, because you have some control over who they spend their time with. And I remember Billy Graham came on on radio or television. I don't remember which it was, and I just got hit. Boy, the Lord just hit me that day. And when I heard Billy Graham, I always had a soft spot for the Lord in my life. And when I heard him say that God has a plan for your life, and he just had such a wonderful way of preaching that it just drew you in. My mother in 1953 became a Christian because of Billy Graham hearing him, and her and my dad. So when I was 17, my mom was smart. She had the Christian radio on all the time. She used to say, my kids will catch it even if it's by osmosis.
Sure. Absolutely.
And sure enough, that night, Billy Graham was on, and George Beverly Shea sang, "Just as I am, without one plea." Oh, that got me, and I ran out. Didn't want my mom and dad to see me affected by Billy Graham.
Yeah.
And I walked down Napier Road in Canton, Michigan, out in the country, and I just said, "Jesus, tonight I'm giving my whole life to you." And that was the most important moment of my life. Everything goes back to that moment, and it was the trajectory. Where you shoot a rocket, it has a certain trajectory, and that was set the trajectory for my life. And here I am, I'm almost 70, so what was that, 57, 53 years later? Here I am, still on that trajectory.
How can we replicate that? I mean, everybody's story is personal, of course, but many Catholics, they know the doctrine, they know the catechesis, they know teaching, but they know about Jesus, but you encountered Jesus, our Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
How can we bring that about, make that a focus and emphasis?
I think exactly what you guys are doing, because you can plant the seed and you can set the stage, but you can't crawl inside the person.
Yeah.
You know, so you plant the seed. You guys are doing this. How many people? You have no idea. Maybe the number of people that you're affecting in the same way, or with your own kids. Your own kids are the most important mission field. Forget Rome Boys.
Yeah, you're right. Sure, absolutely.
If it's a choice between raising your kids right and making sure they're right, or spending your time doing this. Quit the Rome Boys and take care of your kids. Now, you're doing both. That's wonderful. I mean, but you know my point.
Yes.
Is that your family is your first mission field.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the kids will, I think that I was able to have that experience because I saw the reality of it in my mom and dad. And I saw my dad and mom really love Jesus, and they were serious about it. And yeah, they fought once in a while, and they weren't perfect, but there was always that great love of Jesus and pride of being a Christian. And so that affected us, you know, and my three brothers are all the same. Yeah. One of them has become Catholic. The other one is just a good evangelical. But it was living in that family, and then hearing Billy Graham. So I think raising kids that way, giving them that environment, and being real yourselves.
Yes.
Not being fake for 1 minute, being real. Be totally honest with the kids about things. And if the priest is long-winded, and I mean, I remember saying, man, that pastor was sure long-winded, didn't have anything to say today. And the kids would say, Dad, you're right. They appreciated I was honest with them.
Yeah.
And then when I talked to them about other things, they knew I was being honest with them. You know?
That's a great point.
And it was just a way of being real with the kids and using every experience for teaching moments. I remember when we were coming home, and my daughter, my oldest one, who's now a PhD in philosophy, and we were coming home late one night because we lived out in the country when I raised the kids. Because we homeschooled, we had to live in the country because it was illegal in Michigan to homeschool.
It's hard to
and
believe.
They could have put us in jail and taken our kids and put them in foster homes for educational neglect. We were pioneers of this. Wow. And one day we moved out in the country, bought an old farmhouse, and disappeared for 5 years until it became legal. But we came home one night late, and there was a car parked in the corn, you know, the 2-track out to the cornfield. And I saw that car, and I knew what was going on in that car because I was a rebellious teenager once, you know. And so my daughter and me in the car, it's dark, and so I said, this is a great teaching moment for me. So I pulled up behind the car, and I put on the bright lights, and there's 2 bare butts in the back window.
Oh, my goodness.
In the station wagon. So I just left the lights on, and I went, beep. beep, and you watch those two kids get dressed in the back of that car real fast with the back window all steamed up.
Oh my!
And then my daughter says, "What are you doing, Dad? What are they doing, Dad?" And she was about 7 years old. So I backed out and I let them go. I said, "We'll talk about it in the morning because it's late." But I said, "I want you to think about it between now and then." So we got up the next morning. And she came down very thoughtful, and she said, "Dad, I think I know what they were doing in the car." I said, "What were they doing?" She said, "Dad, we have chickens and rabbits and goats, and I know what they do, and then babies come."
Wow.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
said, "You're
At
right."
that age,
and I said, "Now let me ask you this question. Do you think that girl feels like a princess this morning? Do you think she feels special?" No, she was embarrassed by the whole thing. I said, why would she let a boy do that? Probably because she doesn't have a father who loves her and is a good example. And she feels that because she doesn't have a dad who loves and approves her, she has to go find a boy to do that, a male figure. And he said, "Oh, if you really love me, you'll let me do this." And she says, "Well, I do." And I said, "Now, what if she's gotten gonorrhea or syphilis? Do you think if he had that, he's warned her ahead of time? And what if she gets AIDS now because of that? And even worse, what if she's pregnant now? Is that boy going to take care of that baby or what's?" And my daughter saying, "Dad, that rocked her world thinking about that."
Yeah.
And so then I always talked to her about those things. So later on, when she got older, her friends tried to, even though they were good Christian friends, they still tried to entice her to do things. And she said, "My dad told me all about that. I will never do that." So she said that the very fact that I was honest with her about all those things, even from a young age, she said that was so impactful to me that she said that's why I never did any of those things the other kids did.
Yeah.
especially from a father to a daughter.
A father to a
At least
daughter.
what I have found.
Absolutely.
Like my sons are a little bit more challenging. They want to be a little bit more adventurous,
Yep.
rebellious. But the daughters are like totally listening. Like it's just
It was the opposite in our
solid.
family. Our
Okay.
son was totally compliant and easy
Okay.
to do, and our daughters were stubborn. And
All
I
right.
used to. Two of them especially.
Yeah.
I had to be on my toes, and I tell them, "You're never going to beat me. You're never going to beat me. I love you too much to let you get away with anything."
Yeah.
And now they are grateful.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I would say that our father-in-law, we share a mutual father-in-law, Tony and I, and he was all, the week that we were getting married, my wife and I was riding in the car with Steve, my father-in-law, and I asked him, it was just him and me, and we were on our way to go fishing. And I said, "You raised two really good kids, two really good daughters. How in the world did you do it?" Without hesitation, he said, "I didn't give them an inch."
That's right. That's right.
And he talked about everything. I mean, he's real about everything.
Yep.
And
That's exactly right. You give them their parameters, and then you don't bend. You have to be consistent with it,
Yeah.
and you have to be disciplined about it. And that's just the way. And our girls, they're very beautiful girls, and there's always boys interested in them, and they couldn't date until they were 18. That was just a rule that we had. And because it's not a recreational thing where you
Yeah.
go out to driving around at night with some boy. And I said, and when a boy does want to be your friend, even before 18, and wants to be with you at school or come to your house with you or whatever, I said, that's fine, but I want to meet him first.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
every guy had to come and sit down in our living room with our family and my son, and he had to talk to me.
drill
And
the
I said, "I hear
questions.
that you, nice to have you here." I said, "I hear you like my daughter." He said, "Yes, sir, I do." I said, "Good, now you're accountable to me." And I said, we've raised her. Exactly. Right. We've raised her. We've spent a lot of time on her. I've spent a lot of money on this girl. And she's very special to us. And if you think in any way you're going to mess around with my daughter, you got another thing coming. And if you ever do, I'll break both your legs. It was called the broken leg speech. It became famous for that. Nice. And so my daughters would say, "Dad, are you going to give this guy the broken knee speech?" I said, "I swear." Then came along my one daughter, her husband, she met him on an airplane. He was in a Army uniform. He was in the Air Force, and he was going to Iraq. And they met for 2 hours on a plane, and they shared email addresses. And she said later, she was thinking, "That's the most handsome man I've ever seen," and he was saying, "It's the most beautiful." They sat next to each other on the plane,
Wow.
and they communicated by emails from the whole time he was in Iraq, and they fell in love by email. And when he came home, he wanted to meet us. And he wanted to marry her. And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Dad, you're not going to give him the broken knee speech. He just got out of the Army." I said, "I know, but I am." So I called him down one day and I said, "Wes, we're going to do the broken knee speech." I said, "Here's what I tell every young man that's interested in my daughters. And I said, and I will break your legs. And I said, I know you're bigger than me and you're military, but I'll get you from behind. But he liked it that I did that.
Yeah.
And I also said, when you marry my daughter, it's for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Don't ever even think of coming to me and saying you don't love my daughter anymore. Because I said, you have me to deal with then too.
Yeah.
And believe me, I will not take that well.
My dad used to say, a young man will fight you, old man will hurt you.
See, that's why I like the Rome Boys' whole attitude, because I'm right with you guys.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And from that same parenting, I mean, Melissa was a virgin when we married, and she was, she is just an awesome person. And so it's awesome for us to be able to share that with our 6 daughters. That legacy can go on.
That's right. My son, when he was younger, we had all these talks with him too, and he made a club with 5 guys in our parish, and they formed a club that they were going to be virgins and marry virgins.
That's
and they
great.
were going to help each other protect their eyes.
Awesome.
Hold each other accountable. Now, they're 16-year-old boys,
Yeah, right.
and that they're going to hold each other accountable to about pornography and all those things. And they had this thing called a babe alert.
Yeah.
And people think what? But whenever they were somewhere and a girl came by with not many clothes on, they go, babe alert, and they'd all look away.
Ah, yeah.
So that they wouldn't let their eyes, like Job said, my eyes will not dwell upon a maiden.
Yeah.
In a wrong way. So now those guys are all married with kids, and they're still friends, these guys.
Yeah,
Wow,
I have a
awesome.
devout Muslim friend, traditional Muslim friend, Mubashir. He's a great guy. We were having these conversations. We had dialogue about, scripture and, ancient history and so forth. One of the things that we talked about was, he said in their culture, they say, you better make that first look count, which is the opposite of because you look back second time, it's a sinful thing.
Not good.
Or that first glance is what he said.
We always say, where is it at? 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock? No, where's the positioning? Okay, I'll go this way.
Yeah.
But this is so important, how parents raise their kids, and parents that look at their careers as what their purpose in life is to make money have missed the whole boat.
Yeah.
Amen.
Success. My wife and I say that success is when we're 85 years old and we're on the porch swing rocking with our walkers next to us, and we look at all our grandkids out there and all of them and say, this is what life was all about.
Yes. Right.
It's not about careers are important. You got to go out and make money. But people ask me all through my life, well, what are you? They expected I was going to say I've had businesses. I used to run a business with 600 employees, and I sold it so I could do this. And they'd say, well, what are you? And I'd say, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean what religion are you? I mean, what are you? Oh, what do I do to make a living? That's not who I am.
Yeah, that's
Good point.
great.
Good point.
I make a living at this, but I am this.
Yes.
I am, first of all, a Christian. Second of all, a husband and a father. And third of all, a businessman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that comes
In that order.
in that order, exactly.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I often say that my job, my career, my business is just a vessel. It's an opportunity for me to share who I am.
Exactly.
And the world needs those examples, right?
And you'll retire someday and walk away from that, and it'll be gone. But your kids won't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So true.
You don't retire from kids.
Most of the time, whenever somebody asks that question, what do you do? Chasing kids. That's all we do is chase kids. I don't know about anything else we do. but
Especially
chase
your kids, your boys. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, where did he go? He's on the roof. Yeah.
Well, you're definitely a Catholic superstar in a lot the eyes.
Oh, not
But at the
mine
same
or
time,
my
we know
kids.
you're human, right? You're human, and so what's your greatest struggle, or what's the cross? What's the thing that just constantly the devil's trying to get after you, and you know your weakness, and that you're just trying to
This
fight?
might be just for him and the priest. I don't know.
No, I don't know.
You know what I
I'm with sexual sins. Always every guy. If he said he's not,
We're male.
if he's not right, if he's not tempted by pornography and things like that, he's lying. I just said one time I gave a talk on being husband and wife and sexuality. I said, how many men here are not attracted or tempted by pornography, sexuality, unclean thoughts? And I said, raise your hands. And a couple guys raised their hands. I said, you're liars.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
There's
No, I'm sitting right next to my wife.
And one of the best things a husband can do is to tell his wife First of all, every man, I don't really have any big thing like that. I'm with my wife all the time. We have a wonderful time.
That's
I'm
great.
happy, and
Yeah.
I'm happy. We're not struggling in any way, and so I'm really pleased with our life and what God has
Praise
done
God.
for our life,
Great.
and no big thing that's hanging over my head. But I remember we've been married 47 years, and on our 25th anniversary, I planned ahead because back, and even back then younger, all those sexual temptations and things were there, and I realized that my best line of defense was my wife, if she understood. Okay, so I planned a weekend on our anniversary. I got rid of the kids. And we spent the whole night the whole weekend in the bedroom. And yes, we had a wonderful time together. But mainly what it was is I had collected a bunch of books to read together. And one of them was called The Spiritual Man. Another one was called Letters to Philip and Letters to, where a father wrote letters to his son and his daughter about married life and sexuality and things. And we read those books together. And I read to her about men that 95% are tempted by this, and I said, I want you to understand what goes on in my head and in my body because you don't have testosterone.
Yeah.
And I said, I wish that you had testosterone in your body like I do for 24 hours so you'd understand what men are like. And she said, I wish I could too, because she said, I don't understand it.
Right.
And so I explained to her all about testosterone and all about the sexual male urges. And I said, God gave them to us, but it's also because of the fall and because of the world we live in, there's these temptations. And I said, but I want you to know them because I want you to be my first line of defense.
Yes.
So when I go out on a trip and when I come home, I want you to ask me, did you win the battle for me while you were gone? See, so this is the kind of thing a man and a wife should communicate, because I learned that a woman is turned on and what she needs is romance and safety. And there's nothing my wife likes better than for me to say, I have eyes only for you.
Amen. Amen.
And yet she knows that men now are driven by sight and smell and sexuality, and you may, and it can rise up in a moment.
Yeah,
Sure. And I showed her a picture of two like radio faces. One has like 50 buttons and dials and gears, and it says female. This one over here says male, and it just has an on-off switch.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
true.
explain these
Exactly
things.
right.
Well, now
That's great.
I hadn't done that yet. In 25 years, we had talked, but this one is like a heart-wrenching, soul pouring out to her to tell her what goes on inside of me, and she told me what goes on inside of her. And I realized that if a wife can understand her husband's physical and sexual needs and work with him, and he understands her emotional need for love and security and being the only one, you put those two together and you've got a happy couple. So I give a talk now called Men, Women, Sex, and Heaven. How sex is a road to holiness.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good sex is a road to holiness. Because if a husband and a wife understand their needs, and they're very different, and they complement each other, if they understand those things and they communicate about them, even if you have to take a weekend off and get rid of the kids and just sit and say, I'm going to talk to you about things I've never talked to you about before, or what's
anyone
going
else.
on in my veins and what testosterone is. But after that, my wife said that was one of the most fantastic weekends, and
great.
it set the whole stage for the next 25 years.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
great. Good advice.
So this would be a good time to issue a warning to any kids that might be listening.
You're going to edit
This
that.
might be
and put
some
it in front.
mature in nature conversation here. So
It's real.
Well, we didn't get too raw.
No, it's
easy.
it's very real, and and it's difficult to be. That conversation has to be built on a foundation of trust.
It does, absolutely.
And being vulnerable like that is.
And also,
key.
people in marriage need to know when you're young and you meet this beautiful girl and it's all you can think about, and you marry her and that's all you can think of. You can't wait to get home from work or whatever. And that is what we would call maybe infatuation. It's just this, you're driven by this emotion. But as you get older, that's not always there.
Yeah.
It still is. Many times I still am very romantically in love with my wife. I am.
Yeah.
She's still beautiful, and I tell her she's the most beautiful girl in the world all the time. Probably 10 times a day I tell her that. And we say we love each other back and forth at least 20, 30 times
Yeah.
a day.
That's great.
But what I've learned is that as you get older, the love is different, but it's deeper and richer.
Yeah.
To the point where when I got both of my knees replaced in April, she took care of me and she was there every minute. And I said to her, and I also put up blogs every day with my experience of this thing with my knees. And I told her, I said, if you ever get in a car accident and you're crippled from your neck down, it would be my honor to push you around in a wheelchair and take care of you. But see,
that's
it
it.
goes from the emotional, infatuated kind of love, which is necessary. It's there, but it draws you in. And if you got to realize that there's what's the songs about? I don't love you anymore. The love is gone.
Oh, yeah.
But they're referring to that infatuation kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you realize that you're moving along and it's now a much deeper, richer love, I would never go back to the earlier form with knowing what I have now.
Yes.
It seems to be that way through life, right? Like
Yeah.
I always say, like, I'm so glad I'm not in the dating scene.
Yeah.
Oh, my
we
goodness.
said that last week.
I'm glad I'm not a
goodness.
teenager.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not in my 20s anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad I'm
Yeah.
not in my 30s anymore.
I mean, to have that conversation on your first date is like, so have you always been a guy?
Yeah, right. Have you always been a guy? I mean, I'm from an age where that just was not acceptable.
Right.
Oh,
right.
sure.
Right.
I remember once, first time I heard there's such a thing as a homosexual. I said, "What's that?"
Yeah, right.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
And I haven't changed my attitude about that.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
And when you talked about being happy where you are in age, my dad lived to be 94, my mom to be 100. And even when my dad was 90 and using a walker, I said, "Dad, if you had a choice, would you go back and be 40 again?" He said, "Oh, no.
Wow.
He said, "I'm happy I am right where I am." He said, "I wouldn't want to go back and start over again at 40. What about 70? No, I'm ready." He said, "And I'm ready to go meet the Lord anytime." He said.
Oh, wow.
So, but I realize that too, because I'm going to be 70 and I wouldn't go back and be 60 or 50 again.
Yep.
Yeah.
I took psychology of the elderly at University of Houston, which is a great class. And I learned it because I'm a nursing home administrator, by license and trade. The happiest years of someone's life, according to almost all measures, is between the age of 65 and 75. And what I realized in the nursing home is that some of those folks you can't keep apart. And they are most highly sexually driven during that age. So maybe there's a correlation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But those two things may be two separate things. But excuse me, I think that's very hopeful because you're at the peak of happiness.
I am totally happy. That's like you said, what's the big problem? I can't say that I have. We've been careful with our money and worked hard, and so we have the retirement and we're comfortable there. We just bought an old house and remodeled the whole thing. The only thing that's the same on it is the bricks outside. It's a beautiful house, and I let her design the whole thing, and our daughter's an interior designer. So we're settling in that nice little cozy house now for the rest of our life.
Great.
The kids are grown up, and they're all doing well, and they're our best friends, and I get to come be at a show with you guys.
Yeah.
To evangelize all throughout the world.
And I get to
You just
dress.
asked what his hang up was. It was coming here.
And I'm kind of now in charge of my own schedule. I only do things that Janet and I decide to do a year in advance and put them on our calendar. So.
Yeah. So for your work, what keeps you busy now? You're writing. You're traveling.
Yeah, it's a lot of it. We do 10 pilgrimages a year. We're going to start cutting back though. So if anybody wants to go on pilgrimages with us, you got to do it.
Price is going up.
Yeah, it's going to go less frequently, and we'll have to raise the prices a bit. But we do that, and that leading a pilgrimage, you guys have done it, but it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of time and energy. And then I'm writing. My new book on Genesis just came out 2 months ago with Ignatius Press, and that took a while to do. And now I'm working on the book of Acts.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And doing conferences. I probably have 20 speaking engagements around the country this year. I've cut back a little bit. I'm doing Franciscan University summer conferences and men's conferences and things like that all over. And I'm just enjoying being with my wife now. I mean, I don't work every day anymore.
Yeah, it's great.
that's great.
And when we get home from this, I have 12 days with nothing to do.
Oh, perfect.
I have some radio shows, but those
Yeah.
are fun to do.
Yeah.
I do one every Tuesday morning on EWTN called Things in the Bible. We've done 150 of them. Things like rivers and streams, goats and cows, clouds and rain. The next one we did Holiness and Saints. And so we've done 150 different topics.
That's
like that.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
so we do. It's only 10 minutes, but it's fun.
Sure.
And so when I get home, I have 12 days. I have nothing on the schedule except for a
How
couple
fun.
radio shows.
That's neat.
Well, that's a good time. We're in the Advent season,
Yeah.
and it's leading up
Yeah,
to
preparation.
Christmas, and
Yep.
perfect.
So going back to your story and coming into the Catholic Church the way you did, I want to go a little deeper on your family. Now, you said in your talk that your parents totally against it,
Yeah,
completely against it.
both sets of parents.
Your dad actually showed up, but your mom didn't. Oh, both sets of parents. You didn't really touch on her parents.
No, her parents were very upset. They wouldn't come to our house for over a year.
Wow.
They wouldn't.
I guess that's my question is, did they ever come around?
Yeah. For my parents, it was a theological issue because they had become Baptists and they were raised in a very anti-Catholic environment. So almost everything that they learned, they also learned that the Catholics think this. So it was always an antagonistic thing.
Yeah.
So when I became Catholic, for them, it was a family betrayal and a huge disappointment because they'd raised me to be this good Baptist, and I taught the Bible in Baptist churches, and they're so proud of me, and all of a sudden I joined the enemy camp. And so to them it was a theological thing, but for my wife's family, they were not evangelicals that way. They were more nominal Presbyterians. I mean, they went to a church with a lady pastor and this kind of liberal stuff. They didn't, but they came. My wife is the first Catholic in over 400 years in her family.
Oh, wow.
So in their family, they used to claim that they had a Bible that was wrapped. It was from John Huss all the way back to Czechoslovakia, and it was wrapped in an oil skin because they had to hide it in the front yard underground, or the Catholics would kill them. They used to tell these stories. It's all exaggeration, but that's the story that came down to them. Mm-hmm. So for them, for my wife's family, it was more of a, how could you do that? The first one in 400 years.
Yeah.
Because my wife's mother, they can trace their ancestry to 4 men that were on the Mayflower.
Wow.
Coming over for the Puritans, religious freedom. And for his side, they came from Czechoslovakia. So they were part of the Czechoslovakian John Huss Reformation there. So they're just staggered and angry that she would break the family tradition. So both of the families really were against us, and we lost all our friends in 2 weeks because I'm not quiet about things. No. And they all just said, you don't want to argue with Steve because if he decides to do something, he's got reasons for it. And our families came around. I'll just tell you this real quick how that happened with my parents. It came around because my kids, realizing that Grandma and Grandpa were getting older, and I told them you should get to know them because they're old and they're wonderful. So they started, as soon as they got their driver's license, my daughter and her younger brother Jesse started going to visit them for lunch every Tuesday. And they would ask them questions and tell them what they were doing in the church. And my parents were so impressed with the spiritual life of my kids and what we were doing, because they'd see all of a sudden the movies that we were making and things, that they finally said, Steve, we're really proud of what you're doing. We want you to know that we don't understand why you're Catholic, and we're not going to become Catholic, and we're not happy really that you're Catholic, but we know God brought you there for a reason, and the fruit that you are bearing, that is bearing in your life, we're very proud of you now. We want you to know that we accept and are proud of you. Now, my wife's side of the family, her mother's a book reader, the book clubs and things, So they were one time in Kerrville, Texas, camping with some friends, and the women were sharing the books that they'd been reading. And the one lady says to my mother-in-law, "Oh, I've got a new book you've got to read, Mary." And what are you laughing? You know where this is going. And so she said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "It's a book called Crossing the Tiber." By a guy named, she said, "Who wrote it?" She said, "A guy named Steve Ray." She goes, "Oh, that's my son-in-law. You liked his book?" She said, "Oh, yeah, it's the best book I read, Mary. You got to read that book." Whoa. From that point on, all the animosity was gone.
Wow.
And they didn't become Catholic either. Her father died. Her mother's now in her 90s. But they are now very evangelical, very still that way. But they loved and appreciated what we're doing, and they wanted to come out to Phoenix. Where they live in Phoenix in the winter, so they wanted to see our studio where we made our movies. And in fact, my new book on Genesis, my mother-in-law is now blind, And she just had a lady come in and read aloud to her the whole book of Genesis that I
Wow,
wrote.
that's great.
And
Yeah,
she was
they-
saying how much she enjoyed the book I wrote on Genesis.
that's
So both families came back over a year or two time, and both because of the fruit of the whole thing. And so then we have good. Then my brother, he became Catholic. My one brother did. My nephew, who was very anti-Catholic, and his wife became. He said, Steve, he said, I bought your book on eBay because I wasn't going to get it from you, and I didn't want you to know I was getting it. He said, but I wasn't 18 pages into that, but I knew you were right. And he said, in case you want to come, I'm being received into the church this Easter.
Wow.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because my wife grew up Baptist, and her mom basically at this point doesn't like coming over to our house.
Yeah.
Because,
It's very Catholic.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like a shrine in there.
Yeah. And so she's, just to be, give her props, I guess, she's just uncomfortable.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
just doesn't appreciate it in the way we do. And so I guess I asked that question because I kind of pulled something the similar way. You're saying that your kids with going through grandma and grandpa, and that's what I tell my kids. I said,
Yes.
if the grandma's going to convert, it's going to be because of
Yeah.
you guys. It ain't going to be because
And-
she don't want to hear from us.
Right. And the first step isn't even to think of her converting, but just to accept what you're doing.
That's
my
the
argument.
first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
that's
just
the
want
first
her. And she doesn't want to hear it.
Yep.
The topic gets brought up, she shuts it down.
Yep.
And I said, just listen to us, not to try to convert you, as much as just to understand we're not going to hell.
Yeah, you understand who
just
you are,
understand
right?
where we're coming
Trying to
from.
give her peace, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
really.
And so I told my daughters the last time, or no, I guess it was maybe a year or two ago, and when they were going to stay the night over at her house, and I said, "Here, put this book in her nightstand and see if she just finds it." It was Crossing the Tiber. I don't know if she's found it yet, but I'm sure she has. But yeah.
Well, first of all, if you understand why she feels that way, and I'll just in 2 minutes explain it because I was there. We are taught as Baptists, we're Protestants, and we still are. And many times, many Baptists gain their identity not by what they are, but by what they're not.
Yeah.
So my dad was very proud of being Baptist, but it was partly because he wasn't Catholic. It was a part of his identity. And they believe that the Catholics have it all wrong. It's a perfect counterfeit of true Christianity, so it's very deceptive. You both read the same book, the Bible, but Catholics don't really read the Bible. They have tradition instead. We both pray, but Catholics pray to dead saints and to Mary, where we pray to God. We believe that Jesus raised from the dead. Catholics still keep him on the cross. We get to heaven because we have faith alone in Christ. There's nothing we can do to get there. It's all by the free merit and gift of Jesus Christ. And Catholics are always talking about works and doing penance. We confess our sins to God. They think they have to confess to it. So they use the same language and they use the same book, but it's a total counterfeit of what's really there. Any attempt to accept you and to act as though it's okay is a way of denying who she really is. By coming into your house and this is nice and beautiful, she's, in a sense, it's a denial of who she is, and it's hard for her to do that because a Protestant can't concede one point, because if they concede one point, the dominoes start to fall, and so that's a problem. The other thing is, this is what I didn't tell you this about my mother-in-law. I hope she doesn't watch this show.
Nobody does.
But if she does.
The reason I can talk about my mother-in-law is I know she's not watching.
But I said to my wife, your mother and father are not going to ever listen to me, especially me. Maybe you, but not me. So I'm going to pray every single day a specific prayer, and I'm going to ask God to do something in their life by bringing someone else into their life. That's going to be my specific request. I can't get to them, so I'm going to pray that the Lord will bring somebody else into their life that they respect or that they have a great love or respect for. Well, that's her best friend came. See, that was the lady that said, you got to
Right.
read this book. And that was a year later, and I prayed that every day. And I remember saying to the Lord, I'd be driving the car. I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to bring this up again. And you said, I'm going to drive you crazy. I am going to bug you to death until you do this for me. Sure. And you said, remember the lady that wanted justice, and she went to the unjust judge and woke him up. And he came down and gave it to her, not because he was a good judge, but because she drove him crazy and kept him away. So I'm going to bother you and drive you. You're the one that said to do it. So
Here
I'm
I
going to do
am.
it until you do it. And so when that happened, I said to my wife, there's that answer to that prayer. So I tell people, this is what you should do is take a piece of paper, draw 2 lines down, divide it into 3 columns, put in the first column what you're asking God to do, the second column, the date you asked him, and say, okay, now see this column here, Lord? It's in your ballpark now. When you answer this request that I've asked on this day, I'll put the date down here and I'll say thank you for what you did. And people should start doing that. And I made
as soon as I get home.
I made up 7 rules for dealing with non-Catholic family and friends. There's 7 rules that I came up with. And the 7th one is ask God to bring somebody else into their life. So I say you love them more than you ever loved them before. You do your homework so that when they are interested, you have the answers. You show the joy of the Lord in your life because people like joyful people and want what they have. You, you have patience because God is not impatient with us. He takes his time. Pray for him and make sacrifices for him. And the 7th one is ask God to bring somebody else into their life, which is probably the most important of the 7th.
That's a pretty good list.
It's on my website. It's actually was 6. I added a 7th. So if you go on my website, it's called 6 Rules.
That's great. When you were giving your talk last night, that's one of the things that we talked about afterwards is it's not as if once you became Catholic, now what do? Do I shoot back across the bow, now that I'm on this side of the fence or on this boat, looking at that boat?
I like the whole megaphone idea.
Yeah.
I guess this is our megaphone.
There you go.
Yeah,
It
the
is.
whole story that I do of the ship and the rafts really resonates with people.
That was great.
It was just something
That really
I
was.
thought of in bed, laying there one night trying to think through this. But I can't imagine the number of people that came up and said that really put in perspective
Yes.
Catholic and Protestant for me.
Everybody who came up to us after
Yeah.
the show talked about the ship.
That was it.
Oh, my dad just made the comment afterwards as well. He's just like, that's what the people in RCA are doing. It's like, let me on. They're just going around the boat in circles. Let me on already.
That's right. Yep. People love stories. I've heard people give talks, and it's all theoretical quotes from the Catechism, theology, and people don't remember it, and they fall asleep. But if you tell stories, the story of the ship and the rafts, the story, you keep people engaged.
You also do the theatrical, though. So, like, I remember in the videos, you're falling in a big old thing of mud.
Yeah.
You tell the story about the gladiator. If you want to say that one again, the confirmation one, I mean, that story shows.
The falling in the mud one was where I made the story, our documentary on Mary called Mary, Mother of God. We got 9 of them just for people to know. They're all filmed on location in about 16 countries. And the one I did, Mary, Mother of God, I wasn't happy when we were getting towards the end of how I explained the Immaculate Conception. So I said, I came up with this idea, Janet, I have to fall in a mud puddle. So I found a path, and we put a log in front, and we dug a hole beyond the log and filled it with a plastic liner and filled it up with garden, from Garden Center, the black dirt. And then I came walking toward it, and I said, Mary says that these are arguments I used to use against Catholics in my old days. Mary says, my soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. Wait a minute. Only person who needs a Savior is a sinner, so Mary must be a sinner. See? And I say this in the movie. But I said, wait a minute. There are 2 ways to be saved from sin. And let's look at it from a puddle of mud point of view. There's 2 ways to be saved from a puddle of mud. And when I say that, I trip and I fall right into the mud puddle.
In it.
And then a hand pulls me out. And I said, the first way is to be pulled out and cleaned up. And then it rewinds like a video. And I'm coming at the mud puddle again. And I trip again and fall, but a hand reaches out and stops me. I say the second way to be saved from sin is to be prevented from falling in the first place. Now I say any 8-year-old kid can explain the Immaculate Conception to their friend. Just go get a mud puddle, push your friend in, and tell them about the Immaculate Conception.
Oh, I can see my oldest daughter doing that now.
Oh, then the other story I guess you wanted me to say was about the confirmation. A family asked me to be the confirmation sponsor for their boy because they had been Church of Christ, and they're really hardcore Protestants, and we worked with them, and they became Catholics. So would you be my sponsor for my son? And I said, no, I can't do it because I travel too much, but I'll meet with them one evening. I have Wednesday free. Oh, one evening, that's good. Please, okay. I said, bring him over at 7. So I had just, there's a thing of the Colosseum here. I had just made a video about the Apostolic Fathers, and it was all started in the Colosseum. And even at that point, you can hire, you guys may have seen them, those soldiers that are there, and you get pictures taken with
Right.
them. And I hired 3 of them to, when I was Justin Martyr preaching, they all came over, and they're yelling at me in Italian, and they arrested me and carried me away in the middle of the movie. See, showing how the Christians got persecuted.
It wasn't too hard to find an Italian to yell at you.
No,
I bet.
no. But these guys, they're all hairy arms and big guys. The fake, they'll dress up like soldiers. They're Roman soldiers. So anyway, so I had a sword because I'd bought a helmet when I made that movie to demonstrate, and I had a sword. So I said to my wife, when that boy comes over, I said, I put my helmet on and I put the sword. This isn't the Knights of Columbus kind of sword.
Right.
This is a real sword. I could cut a head off a horse with this thing. If you get enough, I could take the horse's head off. It's a double blade sword. It's a heavy one. So I put it in the scabbard on my belt, and then my wife went and got a red blanket and she pinned it over one shoulder. So here I am, a Roman centurion with a helmet and a red. So I waited in the shadows of my front porch, and he didn't see me, and he came up the steps, and it was getting dark, and I jumped out from the shadows, and I pulled the sword, and I pushed that kid against the brick with the sword, and I said, Matthew, are you ready to die for Jesus right now? If not, don't waste my time. I'm a busy man. If you're not ready to die for Jesus, you're not ready to be confirmed. Are you ready? Oh, yes, Mr. Ray. And his parents were in the car. You should have seen there. Oh, what did I get our kids into? But I brought that kid in, and I talked to him about what it meant to be confirmed. Yeah. The Jewish boy at 13 goes through bar mitzvah, and there's no way you're going to convert him out of Judaism after he goes through that. They march through the streets sometimes doing that.
Yeah.
And so this boy, I said, this is what, if you're not ready to die as a martyr for Jesus Christ, tell your pastor you're not ready to be confirmed yet. And so they said that everywhere he went for the next 6 months, he told everybody about Steve Ray and the sword. Because I think I really scared. He probably wet his pants. Yeah, he probably wet his pants.
Sounds like a movie title, Steve Ray and the Sword.
I'm definitely going to play this for our confirmation students. Sure.
Well, it is, because confirmation isn't wearing a white dress and having a party. Confirmation. Well, just look at it from the Jewish perspective. A boy, they don't do, the girls don't, but the boy is circumcised at 8 days, just like a Catholic child is baptized. Baptism replaces circumcision. Right. And a boy gets bar mitzvah. And what is that? Bar means son of. Mitzvah means law. He becomes a son of the law. He's now, up until that point, he can say, I go to synagogue because mommy and daddy make me go to synagogue. But at 13, he's now an adult Jew himself, and he's now obligated to obey the law of Moses on his own. This is why Mary and Joseph lost Jesus on the way back, because he was at that age.
13.
And when you're a child, you travel with your mother. When you are now a man, you travel with your father. And he was 12, so Mary thought that now that he's 12, that age of 13, he's with dad. He thought, well, he's still a boy. And where's Jesus? Oh no, we lost the Son of God. But that 13, they become adult Jews, and they are now obligated to obey the laws of God on their own. And the Orthodox Jews hold them to it. And so this is what our kids get baptized. It's an initiation into the faith, but then a confirmation is where they say, yes, what happened to me back then, I'm now going to live that out. And they are now adult Christians, and they have to be held accountable to being adult Christians. And that should be the focus of their life, who they are. And they should be ready to die for it if they have to.
Yeah, I feel
my wife and I teach confirmation class. You guys are going to hear this.
Yeah.
Well, I think I told a lot of priests, I think every parish should have a sword.
Yes. It's for security measures.
And the bishop carries it in for confirmation.
There you go.
Some of those dramatic moments, we've been able to incorporate it in like youth ministry in the past and things. And I remember we left them all in the complete dark, and we had people wearing black cloaks, and one person had a candle that was moving through 100 kids in the gym at St. Thomas in College Station. At the very end of it, we just left them there and slammed the door. And slammed it hard. As a matter of fact, the metal frame got messed up, and we got in a little bit of trouble, but by Father. But that's okay. It was all worth it. But there were parents that even came to us and said, that really shook our kids up. And we're like, yes, good.
You have to do that today, because our kids are so media driven, watching YouTube and videos and TV and rock concerts, and there's always being stimulated by these things.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then you sit them down and you give them a little workbook and start talking about Jesus, and it's not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
You're competing against MTV and YouTube and all these things, and you have to be dramatic.
Yeah. It gets their attention.
You have to
And
get
it
their
sticks.
attention.
Yeah.
In other words, if you're used to something coming at you like this all the time,
Yeah.
it's good to all of a sudden go, whoop, we can make it come at you a different way, and all of a sudden you take notice. So you can't just present the gospel the same. You've got to do things dramatically to get their attention, to shake them, get their attention.
Interrupt their pattern.
And take them out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Something they're not going to forget. They're going to
Yeah.
remember it.
Absolutely.
That's the way we raised our kids. I mean,
Where's your? I'm going to switch gears if
Yeah.
I may. We got you here, so I got to ask you the question: what's your favorite place in the world? Like your favorite spot on the globe?
It has to be the Holy Sepulchre. It may not be the most beautiful, but there's nothing else like that, because that's where time and space and infinity intersected. The divine and the human all. Actually, it would be two. It'd be Nazareth, because that's where the Word became flesh.
Yeah.
When Mary said yes, the Word, those cells, you couldn't see them with your naked eye, and yet God had become man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also a very strong pro-life argument.
Yes.
Because it said she made haste to go visit her relative Elizabeth. So let's give her 5 days to pack her little suitcase. And then it would be a 5-day walk, at least, a walk to go from Nazareth to Ein Kerem, where she was. And when she got there, how big was the baby in her womb? You see pictures of the visitation with Mary big.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Yeah.
But how big was the baby 10 days after
and the baby leapt
conception?
in. Yeah.
And John the Baptist leaps because he recognizes the Word of God in the new Ark of the Covenant. And Elizabeth said, "Who am I that the mother of my zygote should come to me?"
Just 10
Mother by
days
zygote,
old.
yeah.
Yeah, zygote. So, but she said, "The mother of my Lord," which means God. So she's those cells that you would still need a microscope to see.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, recognizes that God had become man, and that was a human being in there, and it was her God. So this is a very strong pro-life argument from the very
Just
moment
10
of
days old.
conception. Yeah. So that would be probably one of my favorite places, Nazareth, because of that. And Protestants don't go there, by the way. That's just not a place they go to
Interesting.
usually. They have all their own sites. They mainly go to national parks, the Israeli national parks, because they don't like the Catholic stuff in the churches. Then
It's just biblical.
yeah.
It's right.
It is, yeah. But it's very Catholic and Orthodox with the oil lamps hanging, and they can't do
Icons,
anything in those churches because you have to be a priest to have a service or do anything. They have to sit outside and sing their little hymns outside. So they're very alienated in those sites.
And that doesn't bring up any questions for them. Why is this all Catholic? Why is this all Orthodox?
I know.
I mean, you would think
Like
common
the wood
sense
of
would
the
be like,
crib-
why
the
is this
crib
all
It
here?
should, absolutely.
The wood of the crib in I forget what church that's in
St.
Rome.
Mary.
Major Mary.
Yeah. You got
Well,
the
the
wood of the
reason
crib
they
there.
can do that is because they consider that Christianity got corrupted after 400, 500, 600 AD and in the Middle Ages, and that all those churches are a product of that. They would say it was all
came
pristine
after
and
the
pure,
facts.
but
Yeah.
after the Catholicism crushed the real Christians, the real Bible-believing Christians, Catholicism, and then they had the Crusades, and they killed them all in the Inquisition, and they tortured them all. So then they took over and built their churches. That's how they would get over that idea.
But they like St. Augustine.
But some do, but not all of St. Augustine. Only the
Only the
out
Protestant
of
parts.
context
Pick and
parts.
choose,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I have a book at home by a Protestant writing about the church fathers, and he said we Protestants, we should understand our church fathers, and I'm going to introduce you to them, but we're not going to discuss the problematic passages.
Oh gosh! So
At
that's
least he's up front of it.
that's John 6:66, is it not?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
like
Yeah,
the
that's
first
true.
Protestants, they just
Yeah.
this is hard to
I
understand.
just think about that passage. I think it's in Acts where it says, "Hey, leave these guys alone. If it's of men, they're gonna they'll be gone. It
Yeah.
won't be a problem anymore.
Yeah.
But if it's of if they
God.
stick around, it's of God. And then you might
Then you have
yourself
to pay
battling
attention
God.
to it, yeah.
So
But the real special place in anywhere in the world is obviously the Holy Sepulchre, because it's all under one roof, and that's where Jesus was crucified, died, buried, and rose again, all under one roof.
Yeah.
And you just can't go up there and touch the top of Calvary. And I tell our groups when they're up there, if you did that 2,000 years ago, your hands would come up sticky with his blood. Do you realize what happened here? And they all cry. I mean, it's very emotional. And in the tomb. So,
All right, I'm ready to go.
it's the tomb is going in the tomb is. I've been in there so many times, but it's still very powerful every time. And I remember when I took my 6 oldest grandkids, I know everybody there, in the Holy Sepulchre. I just go over and I said to Brother Andrew, I said, can I come over and have Mass here at 5 a.m? He said, we have an opening. I said, good. I only need 20 minutes. So the priest I had with me, I brought my wife and I, the priest and my 5 grandkids. And we went in the tomb and they shut the door and we had a half an hour Mass. And my grandson was dressed to serve at Mass. And
what a
That's what it's
memory.
all about, right?
They'll
there.
never forget that.
No.
They'll never forget
Absolutely
that.
not. Yeah.
But those are you can't beat those two places. I mean, just for the significance and importance. Now, they're not the most beautiful. I have places
Sure,
that I think
yeah.
are much more beautiful, and places where the food is much more. There's an old saying: the more you eat good food, the more you want to eat good food. And one of my problems is traveling, is that we take our groups to the finest restaurants anywhere.
Yeah.
And once you start eating really nice food, like I'm going to Lourdes and Fatima with a group in April, and I'll get there 2 days early, and there's a restaurant on the ocean there off of Lisbon, and I know right where I'm going when I get there.
I know what you're going to order.
There's all the fish there still wiggling, and
Oh,
then you pick the
yes.
fish you want, and they'll cook it right in front of you.
The picture right behind you is right across from the martyr with the arrows. Gosh, why is it?
Sebastian?
Yeah,
Right,
Saint
Saint
Sebastian's.
Sebastian. Oh, there.
So,
Oh, okay.
but that's Archipelagia.
Yeah.
I forget. It's a beautiful restaurant. There's the
yeah.
catacombs underneath
It was
it.
Teresa
and-
Tomio's favorite.
Oh yeah,
restaurant.
it's called the archaeological.
Yes.
in English
Yeah.
you'd say it's the archaeological restaurant. Yeah, we take our groups there all the time.
It was
place.
nice.
Yes, it was
It
very
was
nice.
nice.
But the more you have good wine, then you can't. You
It's hard to
just
go
don't
back.
appreciate.
You
less
just can't
wine.
go buy a box of wine after that.
No, you just can't do it. No.
Yeah. Favorite place to eat then in the world? That's a good one. You've been all around the world.
yeah.
I have so many. I have in my iPhone contact database over 100 restaurants
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yes.
All
And you
over the
know a
world.
lot of those people having traveled there and brought groups there,
Right.
knowing some of the restaurant owners.
And if I just walk in, they'll give me a meal. They won't charge me. 'Cause I know
Perks of the job.
But there are some. I have favorites in Israel. I have favorite restaurants in all over Italy and Rome.
Yeah.
I have a restaurant that it's called La Pelata de Mario's, the Mario's pot.
Yeah.
And we've probably eaten there over 300 times. And you sit there and you can see the top of St. Peter's there, and he has a table reserved. Whenever he knows we're in Rome, that table has a reserve sign just for us.
That's awesome.
And our kids have eaten there when they were just little tiny kids, and now they're all married and gone, and he's still there, and I walk in. When we come there every year, he has a bottle of wine that has special made with our name on it.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, it's,
That's
Yeah, gotta
service.
treat him right. He brings 150 people here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's one of our favorite, just for nostalgia.
Yeah,
For having
absolutely.
been going there for 30 years, we've been going there.
Yes.
It's a tradition.
It becomes a tradition. Yeah.
We really enjoyed Assisi. It was great, gosh, food was great. Just some of the hole in the wall places
Yeah.
were better than the
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
that you find that.
You
yeah.
can't
see
find
that
a
in
bad
Texas.
restaurant.
Yeah,
Just
yep,
go
it's
to the
true.
wall.
You won't find a steak over there like you find in town.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
not-
what all the
no.
Texans were trying
Yeah.
to find. We want our meat.
Yeah.
You also learn when you go places, you don't go to Rome and order a steak and think it's going to be like in Texas.
Yes,
Right.
it's
Very
true.
different.
And you don't go to Wyoming and order seafood and think it's going to be like
Right.
the coast of
Exactly.
Lisbon.
Exactly.
So you also order what's their specialties.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So you've been, how many, you said you've been to Israel
Over 200
over
times.
200 times. My goodness.
That's amazing.
Any quick recommendations that you would make to somebody? I know going on pilgrimage, you've got it all squared away. So that's nice and packaged. But anything that, you made some comments last night. People are worried about what's going on in the news. And
Well, you should be worried about being in the United States. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not
No kidding.
safe anywhere here now. A priest was stabbed and killed in Nebraska
Uh-huh.
just this last weekend. He just went into a
in
sacristy
peace.
and he got stabbed there. You got problems going all on in the country. For example, I don't know the exact numbers, but 600 or 1,000 people get murdered in Chicago
I
in
know
a
it.
year.
Yeah.
And yet, if your business say your cotton business said, we've got a big customer up there that'd like to buy your cotton and we're going to fly into Chicago, you wouldn't think twice about flying into Chicago, getting off at O'Hare, getting a car and going to, and yet 600 people, 10, 15, 20 a weekend get shot.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't think twice of going to Chicago
Yeah,
because everywhere you go, there are areas you don't go to.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there's areas where things flare up and there's problems.
Yeah, it's the border here.
Yeah,
So,
your border. You wouldn't.
yeah.
Yeah,
don't
in
go
Texas,
down
you don't
Del
go
Rio.
near the border. No. So in Israel, there's places you don't go. You don't go down by Gaza. And what people don't realize is that all of the news that's happening right now is down in Gaza area, down in the south near the Egyptian border. Gaza used to be a part of Egypt until the 6 Day
And how
War.
far is that from any of the holy sites that you go to?
45 miles from Jerusalem, but that's a long way in
Yes,
that
it
country.
is.
It
Yeah,
a mile.
winding roads.
And they're shooting missiles out of Gaza, and you hear, they're shooting all these 100 missiles a day or whatever, but they land in the desert, most of them. You don't hear about towns getting blown up with these missiles. They shoot them into the desert. They're this time going a little farther into Ashkelon and Akron and Ashkelon and other places along the coastline, but I could be in Jerusalem or Tiberias right now, and you wouldn't know anything is going on because it's not in that area. What is happening is the airlines stopped flying in because Tel Aviv is kind of at the far edge of where the missiles are going. So they're closed. I think El Al, the Israeli airlines, the only one flying in and out of there right now. Delta, which is they've discontinued all flights till February 4th.
And they're real big in Michigan, right?
They're
Coming
huge
out of
in
Detroit. and,
That's
yeah.
their big hub, one of the hubs, in
Yes.
Minneapolis and Atlanta. So I'm just this close to being 3 million milers with Delta.
Really?
Just-
Goodness
man.
gracious.
Can't imagine the miles you've got right
Gosh.
now. 3 million.
No wonder your hair.
Yeah, my
Just-
wife too, because she goes everywhere with me. So she's also a diamond 2 million.
Oh, that's
miler.
fun.
It's funny because normally the husband is and the wife. So we
Right.
go into
Business trips and all
the lounge at the airport, and I have this, and they said, "Is this your guest?" I said, "No, she's a 2 million miler too. Treat her with respect."
That's great.
But if I took you right now to Israel and we were in Jerusalem, it would be pretty much the same, except security is much higher. And they called up all of the reservists, 300,000 of them. So right now, all of the crops, and all the foreign workers went home too. The Filipinos and the Indians, that's mainly who they are.
Yeah.
They all were sent home because they didn't know how much the war was going to escalate. So all the fruit and vegetables are rotting on the trees and on the vines. So there's nobody there to pick it. And
Wow.
so the cities are quieter because they're all in the military right now until this is won. But they're going to have it done. Israel can't allow it to go on much longer. I just heard they're pumping seawater into the tunnels, which is great. They flush them out. That's how you get rats out of a sewer system. And the Hamas is really evil. They need to be totally obliterated.
yeah.
And because their only goal
Because that's the only defense you have, basically, right?
is to get rid of them
yeah.
because
Yeah,
they
wipe them out,
hate
yeah.
Israel.
They won't stop.
They hate Israel more than they love their own kids.
Yeah.
In other words, put it this way: Israel is always going to be there. Israel's a powerful country. They're not going
sure.
anywhere.
Yeah.
You would be much smarter to learn to live with Israel than to fight against them, because fighting against them is only going to destroy your kids' opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You learn to live with them. Jews have money and brains. The Palestinians have labor and resources. Do you realize what happened if you put those two together?
Oh, wow.
They'd be an unstoppable force.
It'd be an unstoppable force.
Their,
It'd be the most wealthy portion of the whole world.
their economy
Yeah.
would just explode.
And all of their kids, the
right now, it
Palestinian
literally
kids,
is exploding.
yeah. But the Palestinian kids would
Yeah.
have these great opportunities.
Yes, they
Yeah.
would.
But these people hate Israel more than they love their own kids, and they are always saying that if it's going to happen again. So Israel knows if they do a ceasefire, it only gives Hamas a chance to regroup, and then 10 years from now they're going to do the same thing again. You have to get rid of them, and they're getting close to that. And now they've got all the UN and the United States opposing them, but Israel's smart enough; they're not going to listen. They're just going to do what they got to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so it's just like Texas ought to close the border on its own. You guys know what you got to do, even if Washington doesn't. So anyway, it'll be over soon. I have a trip going in in February. We're going to do 5 days through Jordan and then 8 days through Israel.
Wow.
And I'm very much hoping and expecting that one will fly.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
not, I have 4
Feb-
buses going in May.
Oh, wow. Gosh. Yeah.
Man,
So-
this has been great.
It has. Yeah, I can't believe
I think
you're
we
here.
could keep going on and on, but I know you've got
We
we've
gotta
got
get you
an
to a
event
talk.
tonight for a second night of talking to our cluster parishes, and
Yeah.
so
We're grateful you came down.
Well,
and-
it's a
yeah.
great time. Just as a kudos to you guys for what you do, because you've got a lot of preachers and priests and podcasts, but most guys are just Joe Sixpack. They're just average guys. They love beef and they love
Yeah.
families and countries and they love having fun together and having a beer. Well, you guys, where's the beer, by the way? But
Yeah.
being with you guys is very down to earth, and I think that's why you're being so successful, is because you reach guys, you're hitting on the cardinal truths of the faith and of being a man and a family and an American and a Catholic. You're not just hitting one thing. You kind of got the whole spectrum you're covering, and you're doing it well, and you're doing it a lot of fun and right down to earth. And I think that's why you're being so successful, and it's a pleasure to be part of it, because I feel just like you guys.
Thanks,
you.
Steve.
I'm
Yeah.
no theologian or philosopher, either. I'm just an average guy.
well, just kind of piggyback on. We feel like we're like you because we're involving our families. They're just as much a part of this as
Yes,
we are.
yep,
So
yes.
I mean, they allow us to go do these things
Yep.
Yeah.
when we maybe should be home doing some
Yep.
stuff around there. But they're behind us. They
Biggest
support us.
fans, right?
Yeah, our biggest fans.
Yeah,
It'd be a fun show sometime to bring some of your kids on
Yes.
and have them on
absolutely.
the show with you and talk about.
We got a few hams in the bunch.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
let me really tell you about Dan.
Yeah.
Do you remember who edits these?
Editor in chief. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we thought, like, we're just normal people.
Yep.
And I think there's, looking out there, not saying to all the other podcasters and all the other folks that are out there with a microphone and a camera, but that you're not normal. But just having regular conversations, because the world is so crazy,
It's nuts.
we just wanted to share the fact
Yeah.
that, hey, normalcy exists,
Yeah.
and we're actually the majority.
Yep.
Yes. yes.
And I think that's what's been
Yeah.
the thread that we've all been able to.
And what happens in our country today is so many people, the vocal ones, the liberals, the Democrats, all those the liberals, progressives who are against Catholicism, they're so loud.
Yeah.
They're the voices that are heard.
Yeah.
And so then a Catholic thinks, "Wow, I'm all by myself." But shows like this say, "You know what? You're not by yourself. In fact, you're part of the majority."
Yeah.
Those other people, they may be loud,
Yep.
but they're still the minority, and nobody really wants to be associated with them.
It's so true.
I mean,
And
you
you-
guys are much more fun to be associated with.
Well, thank you. But you even said in one of your talks that I've listened to that, if you want to be a rebel, if you want to be unique and noticed, be a Catholic.
yeah.
That's what my son, when he was 16, he said, "Dad, I think I'm going to get some tattoos and earrings." And I said, "Well, first of all, you're not. If you come in with the earring, there's going to be a little hole. When I'm done, it's going to be a big hole." And I said, "And second of all, why would you want to do that?" And he says, "Well, Dad, I want to be different." And I said, "You want to be different by being like everyone else?"
Exactly.
That's it.
Everybody's doing it. That's what it's not
Yes.
being different. I said, if you want to be different, if you really want to stand out, be an authentic Catholic.
Amen. Yeah.
And my son took me up on it. And he went and bought it. He bought his new car. He bought it himself when he was 16. He saved up since he was 8 years old to buy this Ford Explorer. I took him down to the Ford Motor Company. He bought a brand new one off the front.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
Yeah.
And he went with his buddies. They went to the lumber yard and they bought pieces of plywood and they painted them and they put pro-life signs on them.
Oh, good for them.
And they started driving on Saturday, all day Saturday. They drove through Ann Arbor, which is one of the most liberal university towns. And he said, "Dad, everywhere we went, they're giving us the finger, and we were
Gosh,
rolled down. We
yeah.
were saying, 'God loves you and save the babies.'" He said, "Dad," he said, "we never had more fun in our life." He said, "We were total rebels today."
there you
And then
go.
they came
Exactly.
back and they all smoked cigars and play cards in the garage.
Nice. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah,
Real
that's
Catholicism.
Yes.
amen.
But just think
Amen.
all the things we've discussed in an hour here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Goodness.
We've covered
Yeah.
a lot of bases.
Yeah, this has
Yep.
been great.
Yeah, it's been
we
a
can
lot
have
of
you
fun.
on again. When you coming back? No.
Well, we've been able to make it up to Michigan, and we had a great time. It was my first time. I know.
Same here.
Yeah. So maybe, who knows? We might make our
Yeah.
way up north.
Well, if you ever do, we have a studio, and we'd be happy to have you use it, and we do a show like this, because I live only 10 minutes from Ave Maria Radio,
Oh, awesome.
and they have a whole new video studio set up. So,
Oh, I love looking at everybody's toys.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you ever
Yeah.
come up
Video
there
toys
again,
and-
let me know,
Okay,
and we'll do it. We'll
awesome.
get Teresa to come in one show. I'll do another show. We get
Ah,
Cresta
yes.
to do
Oh,
a show.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Man.
been on with both of those heavy hitting all stars,
Yeah.
on the radio.
Yeah.
Right.
So that'd be awesome to
Yep.
see on set location.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're
Well-
actually going to to spend some time with them here at the end of January. We're going on the Good News Cruise.
Yep.
So we're going to be joining Al and,
Yep.
and Teresa. And,
I'm not on this one. I was on the last one, and I'm on the next one.
Okay. Give us a reason to go on the next one then.
they've been asking, so I guess we'll have to tell them yes.
Yeah, it's a marriage, cruise. So
Right.
I don't think my wife will be too sad if we have to go on 2 in a row.
No,
Or 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
What
All
our goal
right.
is to do with corporate travel, because we're partners on a lot of things and we work together, is to get a cruise that is exclusively just the Good News Cruise, where we own the ship. It's not going to be as big a ship,
Yeah,
but
right.
everybody on the ship would be the same.
That would
And
be
I told them
amazing.
it'd be smart to have 2 tracks, one a family track and one an apologetics track.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you
Bible
listening,
and
John?
apologetics.
John Hale? Are you listening?
And that way the whole ship would be just us, and it'd be much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we were invited to Michigan. That's
Yeah.
where we went and stayed. Got to have dinner with the Hale family
Yeah.
at their home, and
Had to have Father Ricardo and then Joe Krupp.
Yeah.
Father
Father
Joe.
Joe
Father
Krupp.
Joe.
Oh,
Good
man.
folks. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a hoot.
Yes,
Yeah,
he is.
He is full of Krupp, I tell you. Man.
he's the MC on this
Krupp.
show.
Yeah,
Yes.
he
I
is.
said Krupp. K-R-U-P.
Yeah.
P. 2 pieces.
2 pieces.
All right. Well,
Good.
Steve,
thank
thanks
you
again.
again.
Thank
Where
you.
can our viewers get more information?
CatholicConvert.com. That's like the hub of the wheel. I've got hundreds of free documents you can download, hundreds of conversion stories, all of our pilgrimages. Actually, you can go if you can't afford to go on a pilgrimage. Every pilgrimage I've done in the last 10 years, I have a 2-hour movie on
Nice.
YouTube movie that you can actually watch a virtual
Oh, wow.
trip with aerials and music and
Oh,
everything.
cool.
So every trip we
Wow.
do, we make a full 2-hour movie of it. So you can go watch those movies. You can see our pilgrimages coming up. I have my store there with all my movies and books and everything. And
I'll be sure to.
CatholicConvert.com.
Yeah, I'll be sure to
Yes.
personally share it as well.
Thank
So,
you.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
And I know Tony's the master of social media, so
you go.
He's
and
our
Joe
social
with
media
video.
guru.
Yeah.
CatholicConvert.com. It's a hard name to remember, you know.
Yeah, right.
Keep it simple. Well, thanks again, Steve, for being
Thank
here.
you.
And in the meantime,
Be bold.
be real.
Be Catholic.
God
God
bless
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 you.
you.